Some debates stay polite, but others, they explode into chaos. And what you're about to hear? You won't want to miss a second of it. This moment wasn't just intense, it was absolutely off the rails. Joe Rogan, never one to bow to the pressures of woke culture, made his stance louder than ever before. He's bold, he's fearless, and he never hesitates to rip through nonsense with razor-sharp clarity. So what happens when a guest strolls into his domain and dares to steer the conversation straight into woke territory? Mayhem. That's what happens. And make no mistake, this wasn't some harmless back and forth. This was a collision course with disaster. And it all blew up the second that guest crossed the line. Let's rewind for a second. This wasn't your average episode, not even close.
By the way, I'm glad you're better. I'm glad it only lasted a day.
You're probably the only one at CNN that's glad.
No. We're not.
The rest of them are all lying about me taking horse medication. And we should talk about that.
That bothered you.
It should bother you, too. They're lying at your network about people taking human drugs versus drugs for veterinary.
Calling it a horse dewormer is not a flattering thing. I get that.
It's a lie. It's a lie on a news network, and it's a lie that's a willing... That's a lie that they're conscious of. This is not a mistake.
Yeah.
They're unfavorably framing it as veterinary medicine.
This was the day Dr. Sanjay Gupta, CNN's top medical figure, walked into Joe Rogan's studio. It was already a headline grabber before it even began. A mainstream media heavyweight stepping into Joe's arena? The energy was electric from the very first second. Joe, never one to play nice with media spin, came locked and loaded, with cold, hard facts in hand. And when Gupta tried to ease into the conversation with polished smiles and soft answers, Joe went in for the truth like a laser. Then it happened. The tension snapped when Joe brought up a claim CNN had been peddling for weeks, that he took horse dewormer during his fight with COVID. Joe wasn't having it, not for a second. He made that perfectly clear. He stared across the table and dropped a direct shot. "You're probably the only one at CNN that's glad," he said. After Gupta mentioned being happy, Joe recovered. Then came the truth bomb. "The rest of them are all lying about me taking horse medication." Gupta's face froze. He clearly didn't see that coming. But Joe wasn't even close to done. He kept going, sharp, controlled, and unshakably calm. The air practically cracked with intensity. Joe wasn't joking, and he made it crystal clear. This wasn't media misunderstanding. It was a planned smear campaign. He laid it down. It's a lie on a news network, and it's a lie that they're conscious of. He didn't need to raise his voice. The words sliced through the room like steel. Gupta tried to answer, but Joe kept pressing, never shouting, never backing down, just drilling into the facts. "They're unfavorably framing it as veterinary medicine," Joe said, calling out CNN for twisting reality. Then came the knockout line. "I can afford people medicine, mother. This is ridiculous." Even with the censor bleep, Joe's fury couldn't be mistaken. It was righteous and relentless.
Did you see that thing that the FDA put out?
What did the FDA put out?
It was a tweet, and it was snarky. I admit it. They said, "You are not a horse, you are not a cow, stop taking this stuff," or something like that.
Why would you say that when you're talking about a drug that's been given out to billions and billions of people, a drug that was responsible for one of the inventors of it making the
Nobel Prize.
The Nobel Prize in 2015.
Yeah.
Yeah, a drug that has been shown to stop viral replication in vitro. You know that, right? Why would they lie and say that's horse dewormer? I can afford people medicine, mother. This is ridiculous. It's just a lie.
I don't think anyone is...
But don't you think that a lie like that is dangerous on a news network when you know that they know they're lying? You know that they know that I took medicine, like, here it is. This is ivermectin.
You got it with
right
you.
Here. Somebody gave it to me.
The attack on Joe's character wasn't just a lie, it was dangerous, and Joe wasn't about to let it slide. "Don't you think a lie like that is dangerous?" he asked, locking eyes with Gupta. "When you know they know they're lying." His voice was calm, but the weight of that question crushed the room. You could hear a pin drop, but CNN didn't care. They kept pushing a twisted narrative. They painted Joe like some reckless guy sneaking into a barn to gulp down livestock meds. It was insulting and absurd, and Joe, he wasn't letting go. The conversation had shifted. It wasn't about medicine anymore. It had become a war over truth itself, A full-on clash about media ethics, responsibility, and manipulation. Gupta's smile slowly faded. His carefully rehearsed calm began to crumble right there on camera. And then, finally, he said it. They shouldn't have said that. The admission hit like thunder, but it was already too late. The damage had been done, and Joe had exposed it all in front of millions. This wasn't journalism, it was a smear job, and Joe called it out for exactly what it was. If they're lying about a comedian taking horse medication, Joe asked, what are they telling us about Russia? About Syria? Boom! That question landed like a wrecking ball. It was a moment of full raw exposure, a spotlight on the media machine, and it burned.
Can I just come back to the one I want to talk about? Two things on the ledger.
You have, before we get to that, does it bother you that the news network you work for out and out lied, just outright lied about me taking horse dewormer?
They shouldn't have said that.
Why did they do that?
I don't know.
You didn't ask? You didn't think that was you're the medical guy over there.
I didn't ask. I should have asked before coming on your podcast.
But they did it with such glee.
No,
yes,
Joe.
They did. I watched.
I watched.
You
watched? No, I don't think there's
yes,
glee.
They did.
No one takes.
Joe Rogan says he has COVID, taking livestock drug despite warnings. Yeah.
Jamie had to pull this up.
You want to play it? But my point is, you're working for a news organization. If they're lying about a comedian taking horse medication, what are they telling us about Russia? What are they telling us about Syria? Do you understand that that's why people get concerned about the veracity of the news?
Joe wasn't just defending himself, he was fighting for the truth. While the network tried to make him look insane, he turned the entire narrative on its head. Most people would have backed down under that kind of pressure, but not Joe. He stood firm and made Sanjay face what his own network had done. There was no way out, nowhere to run. Gupta was cornered by the truth, and the mask was slipping fast. The episode didn't end in yelling or name-calling, but Sanjay looked visibly shaken and clearly defeated. And just when the internet caught its breath, things exploded again, this time with Adam Conover stepping into Joe's studio thinking he had the upper hand. From the moment Adam started talking, it was obvious. He had no clue what he was about to walk into. He came armed with the usual slogans, talking about trans athletes competing based on how they identify, not their biology. He acted like it was a basic issue of kindness, brushing off years of biological science and fairness in sports, like it was some outdated rulebook. With a smug grin, Adam said, "We could sit here and talk for hours about hormones, but I'm not an expert." That's right, he flat out admitted it. He was defending something passionately, with zero actual knowledge. It stunned the entire studio. Then came the classic escape hatch of woke logic. I think sports should just be more inclusive. As if fairness didn't even matter anymore. Joe didn't change his expression, but the energy shifted instantly. You could feel it. The hunter had smelled blood. Joe leaned in, calm but focused, and hit Adam with a truth bomb that shattered the room.
As far as trans athletes go, you know, we could sit here and talk for 3 hours about like all the different ways that hormones might affect your body and might not affect your body. And I'm not an expert on that, and I don't want to claim to be, right? But a sports with trans athletes who are, competing with with their gender, right? That is a sporting world that I'm more interested in, right? And I think we should find a way to make that happen.
Joe reminded everyone, loud and clear, that sports are divided by gender for a reason, and that reason is performance, not feelings. Then he asked the one question Adam couldn't dodge. When a biological male transitions into a female, do they still have physical advantages? Boom! The air got heavy. You could almost see Adam's confidence cracking. He was rattled, and Joe hadn't even finished. Without waiting for a weak excuse, Joe pulled out real-life examples. Biological males who transitioned, then smashed records in women's sports just months later. The facts were undeniable, and the silence in the studio was deafening. Joe wasn't trying to be mean. He was being honest. He laid it out in plain terms. If you're a woman who trained her whole life, he said, and someone who lived as a man for 30 years suddenly competes and dominates, is that fair? That hit like a sledgehammer. There was no way to spin that question. It exposed the entire flaw in Adam's argument. Adam just sat there, eyes blinking, mouth barely moving, trying to recover. But it was too late. The debate was over, and the scoreboard said it all. Joe had destroyed the argument using nothing but logic and facts. While Adam clung to vague ideals, Joe stayed firmly grounded in reality. No nonsense, no fluff. Clips of the interview exploded online. It wasn't just a discussion, it was a televised collapse. People couldn't believe how smoothly Joe dismantled the whole thing. He didn't raise his voice once, but every word hit hard. The internet went wild. Memes, recaps, and commentaries flooded every corner of social media. One post said it best. Adam Conover just learned what happens when you try woke logic on Joe Rogan. You get buried. This wasn't just disagreement. It was a public meltdown.
Well, I disagree, and I've.
What do you disagree about?
I've already. Well, my main point being the one that I already made, right? That like, I don't think that there is such a thing as a perfectly level playing field. I think we decide what kind of playing field we want to have.
Sure, but we do make the distinction where we don't allow men to compete in women's divisions.
And I think that distinction may be breaking down a bit, right? And I think it may be time to break down that distinction.
And Joe? He didn't even gloat. He didn't need to. His message was already thunderous. Bring real facts or prepare to be exposed. Joe had done it again. Cool, clear, and absolutely devastating. Adam came to deliver a lecture and left completely speechless. And believe it or not, that was only the beginning of the chaos. Enter Joy Behar. She never even went on Joe's show, but that didn't stop her from launching a wild attack on him live on The View. Standing there with a smug little grin, she declared, Joe Rogan believes in dragons. Yes, that was her big accusation. The crowd laughed, the co-hosts giggled, and Joy acted like she just revealed some shocking scandal. But then, it all fell apart. Fast. The entire segment collapsed under the weight of its own nonsense. I checked it, she said proudly, claiming Joe believed dragons once roamed the earth. The problem? That's not what Joe said. Not even close. What Joy twisted was actually a podcast conversation where Joe talked about ancient legends, stories of giant lizards and flying creatures that may have inspired old myths. It was an imaginative, thoughtful discussion. Not some fairy tale nonsense about fire-breathing beasts. But Joy didn't care. She ripped the clip out of context and paraded it around as if Joe believed in literal dragons. She twisted his words just to smear his credibility. On national television. But Joe? He wasn't going to let that garbage fly, not for a second. On his podcast, he played the exact clip Joy was referencing and broke it down, line by line. He made it crystal clear. He never said he believed in dragons living alongside humans. And yes, he even laughed at how ridiculous the whole claim was. I said maybe the legends came from people seeing huge lizards, like Komodo dragons, or crocodiles, and turning that into folklore, he explained.
That's why people like our show, because they know that we are checked by ABC News. But
we're checked by everybody.
Yeah, I mean, if we're wrong, we have, the legal note here.
Mm-hmm. The human legal note?
But we went from Walter Cronkite, basically, to this guy, Joe Rogan, who believes in dragons. I checked it. He believes in dragons? He believes in dragons.
Did you triple source that?
Yes, I did. And he also thinks that dragons, like dinosaur-y type of animals, roamed the earth when people did.
Viewers weren't shocked at Joe. They were shocked at The View's complete dishonesty. They watched the original clip, and it was nothing like what Joy claimed. The backlash was instant. Online commentators didn't hold back. Joy Behar just made up a dragon story to attack Joe Rogan, and he pulled the receipts. One post declared. Another chimed in. They're not even trying to be honest anymore. The internet was on fire with outrage. Joy tried to backpedal after the blowback, saying she was just joking. But nobody bought it. Not for a second. The damage was done. Once again, Joe came out looking like the only adult in the room. Calm, factual, and unbothered. And just when you thought the drama couldn't possibly get more explosive, here came Graham Hancock. Graham, the author and researcher known for challenging mainstream archaeology, was no stranger to controversy. Joe had always been fascinated by Graham's theory that an advanced human civilization existed during the Ice Age and passed down lost knowledge after a massive cataclysm. It was bold, mysterious, and totally outside the accepted academic narrative. So when Netflix dropped Ancient Apocalypse, the academic world lost its mind, immediately and aggressively. Archaeologists called him a pseudoscientist, accused him of spreading dangerous lies, and even threw around extreme labels like racist and anti-Semitic, without a shred of evidence. So when Graham returned to Joe's podcast, this time holding an open letter from the Society for American Archaeology, you could feel the heat radiating off the screen. Joe's jaw practically hit the floor when he read the letter's tone. "They're trying to cancel you and label you a threat just for questioning the narrative?" he asked, stunned. And Graham confirmed it. Yes, they even wanted Netflix to slap a warning label on his series, branding it science fiction, just because it dared to question their authority.
Go back to that. Why would
and
someone...
Graham, you're
here's
so
Flint.
much more of a celebrity than me.
He is Flint. Netflix, correct. I'm sorry.
on.
I'm sorry that I am Flint. That's not really my problem. Hey,
saying I have
Netflix.
this power.
Hey, Netflix, correct your mistake and reclassify Ancient Apocalypse as fantasy. Netflix corrects your mistakes. This is you pushing this, Flint. And then the general media
tiny
fishy
Twitter
Netflix
accounts?
show, Ancient Apocalypse, is the most dangerous show on Netflix. You used the word dangerous
Where?
repeatedly in your conversation piece.
I think that the way that you refer to archaeology as, you say that you're number one enemy of archaeology and things like that, you are promoting people to dislike what we do. We are doing our jobs. No, you started off Ancient Apocalypse by calling us patronizing and arrogant.
Archaeologists see me as public enemy number one.
Joe grabbed the letter and read it out loud, his voice full of disbelief. "Misogynistic? Racist? Chauvinistic?" he shouted. "This is how they respond to a theory? With full-on character assassination?" And then Graham dropped the bomb. None of these critics had ever invited him to a debate or tried to challenge his ideas directly. Instead of discussion, they chose smear tactics and silence. Joe couldn't believe the hypocrisy. "You've got a show that's making people curious about history," Joe said, "and they want to shut it down? That wasn't education. That was flat-out censorship." Then it got even hotter. Archaeologist Flint Dibble joined the show remotely, and the second he saw the letter Graham brought, he got visibly defensive. The tension skyrocketed. Flint began ranting about dangerous narratives and accused Graham of chasing fame instead of facts. "You're a celebrity," Flint snapped. "People listen to you." But Graham didn't flinch. With ice in his voice, he calmly replied, "That's not my problem. Your job is to bring better arguments, not throw insults." Joe leaned back, watching the entire exchange unfold like a heavyweight fight, one-sided and brutal. Then came the most shocking moment. Flint demanded that Netflix correct what he called a mistake and relabel Graham's series as fantasy. That's right, a credentialed archaeologist actually wanted an entire theory erased, not disproven, just because it challenged his worldview. He didn't want to argue with it. He wanted it erased from public discussion. And that said everything.
The influence of Flint and his colleagues on media and culture. And again, we've got the Society for American Archaeology, 5,000 members. Flint is one. Flint's co-author, John Hoops, actually helped to write this letter for the Society of American Archaeology. They're saying that I embolden extreme voices that misrepresent archaeological knowledge in order to spread false historical narratives that are overtly misogynistic, chauvinistic, racist, and anti-Semitic. I mean, you apply those labels to somebody and you're going to get that person hated by a lot of people.
Whole ball.
I did not write that.
No, your co-author, John Hoops, wrote it. We urge Netflix to add disclaimers that the content is unfounded. They want it to be called science fiction. In other words, that's a very clever way of canceling me.
Joe's eyebrows shot up. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. "So instead of challenging the ideas, you just want them hidden?" he asked. "What are you so afraid of?" Flint froze. He stumbled through his answer, but it was clear. He had no real defense. The longer he spoke, the more obvious it became. This wasn't about science. It was about control. Neither side backed down, but the difference was glaring. Graham had theories, evidence, and curiosity. Flint had outrage, labels, and fear. As the episode wrapped, viewers flooded online platforms, blasting the academics who tried to silence Graham and praising Joe for keeping the door open to debate. Joe didn't pick a side, he picked honesty. He didn't censor anyone, he let them speak, and the truth spoke louder than anything else. And that's exactly why Joe Rogan is seen as dangerous to the establishment. He asks the questions no one else dares to ask, and he demands real answers. He's not afraid of the backlash, the spin, or the noise, because he knows the power of exposing the cracks in a false narrative. From Adam Conover's meltdown, to Sanjay Gupta's on-air unraveling, to Joy Bahar's desperate smear, and the firestorm over Graham Hancock, one thing stayed the same through it all. Joe Rogan never backed down, not because he's perfect, but because he stood firm while everyone else crumbled under pressure. He didn't silence his guests, he let them reveal the truth with their own words. And the world watched it all happen, unfiltered. So, the next time someone tries to trap Joe Rogan with buzzwords, weak arguments, and phony outrage, just remember what happened to the last 4 who tried. They didn't just lose, they failed miserably.